All right, so we're diving into the 12-week year today.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at Brian Key Moran's system. We've got the audiobook here. And basically, we're going to be exploring, how this whole thing can help you achieve your goals and maximize your performance.
Sounds good to me.
So, right off the bat, Moran kind of takes aim at traditional yearly planning. We make these New Year's resolutions,
Mm.
and we've got this whole year stretching out ahead of us. And he kind of points out that that approach can lead to procrastination. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people kind of fall into that trap of thinking, well, I've got a whole year to work on this. And so what happens? They just kind of push
Uh,
things off.
right. It's like, oh, I've got plenty of time. And
Exactly.
then before you know it, it's November and you're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. And you're scrambling to try and make up for lost time. And, I think the 12-week year really addresses that head on by kind of like shrinking that time frame down.
Right. It's like a totally different way of thinking about time. It's like instead of this marathon of a year,
Yeah.
you've got these intense 12-week sprints.
Exactly. And I think that creates a sense of urgency,
Mm-hmm.
which can be really motivating. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I've only got 12 weeks to make this happen, so I better get moving.
I like that. It's like you get these kind of more frequent opportunities to celebrate your wins
Absolutely.
and, feel that sense of accomplishment. And
Yeah,
that keeps the momentum going.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like those little bursts of dopamine that keep you
Yeah,
going.
exactly. Now, the thing that I find really interesting about the 12-week year is it's not just about time management hacks and, being super productive, although that's definitely part of it. But it also dives into the emotional side of things, like the mindset, the motivation, the whole inner game of achievement.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's really what sets it apart. Because, at the end of the day, just knowing what to do isn't enough,
Hmm.
right? We have to be able to actually execute. And that requires a certain level of emotional buy-in.
Right. So how does Moran kind of address that in the book?
Well, one of the things he talks about is the importance of having a strong emotional connection to your goals. Because, you know, our brains are kind of wired for comfort and routine.
Hmm.
And so change can feel threatening, even if it's good for us.
Right.
So by tapping into that emotional side of things, really connecting with that, like why behind your goals, it actually helps you overcome that resistance to change and actually take action.
I see. So it's like you're tricking your brain into being excited about the change rather than afraid of it.
Exactly. It's about shifting that focus from, fear and anxiety to like anticipation and excitement.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like having a strong vision is kind of like the fuel that powers the 12-week year engine.
Totally. It's what gives you that direction and motivation to keep moving forward, even when things get tough. And it's not just some fluffy feel-good exercise either. It's about being really clear about what you want to achieve and why it matters to you.
So it's like more than just a list of tasks or goals. It's like a picture of your ideal future that you can really connect with emotionally.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's got to be something that like lights you up, something that makes you feel excited and inspired, because that's what's going to keep you going when the going gets tough.
So we've got this powerful vision, right? But how do we actually take that vision and turn it into concrete actions? That's what I'm curious about.
Right. Well, that's where the actual 12-week planning comes in. It's like taking that big overarching vision and breaking it down into these smaller, more manageable chunks. So instead of having this vague annual plan, you've got these really focused, action-oriented plans for each 12-week period.
So it's like creating a roadmap for each quarter, basically.
Exactly. And each step in that roadmap is a specific tactic that's aligned with your overall vision. And each tactic has a deadline. So you're not just like creating a to-do list, you're actually making a commitment to take action and get things done.
Right. And it's not enough to just make the plan, right? You also have to track your progress and make sure you're actually moving in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. You got to be able to measure your results and see what's working and what's not. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. They focus on measuring the end results, which can be really demotivating if you're not seeing immediate progress.
Yeah, it's like you're constantly chasing this moving target.
Exactly. And the 12-week year, it encourages you to measure your actions instead. So, like, did you do the things you said you're going to do? Are you consistently moving in the right direction? That's what the weekly scorecard is all about.
I see. So it's about focusing on what you can control, which is your actions, rather than the things that are outside of your control.
Right. It's about building that sense of momentum and confidence as you go. And I think that's really key for staying motivated and on track.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to goals, honestly. It's like instead of getting bogged down by this big, overwhelming picture, you're breaking it down into these smaller, more achievable steps. You're
Exactly.
celebrating those wins along the way, which keeps you motivated.
And that's what it's all about, right? It's about enjoying the journey and feeling good about the progress you're making.
Okay, I am totally on board with this so far. It's like a whole new way of thinking about time and achievement. I can't wait to dive deeper.
Me too.
Yeah,
We've only scratched the surface here.
I know. There's so much more to explore. I'm really excited to see how the 12-week year tackles things like time management, accountability, and all those other, challenges that we all face when it comes to achieving our goals.
Absolutely. And I think there are some really practical strategies in there that people can start using right away to make a real difference.
Well, let's jump right in. What's next?
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this all works in practice.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture stuff, the vision, the 12-week plans, the whole mindset thing. But I'm really curious to hear more about like the actual week-to-week process. Like how do we actually make this thing work in real life?
Right, so once you've got your 12-week plan in place, the key is to break it down into these smaller weekly cycles. And each week, you're going through this kind of mini routine that keeps you focused and on track.
Okay, a routine. I like that. I'm
Yeah.
all about structure. So what does this routine look like?
Well, there are basically three main steps. You score your week, you plan your week, and then you have what Moran calls a WAM, which stands for Weekly Accountability Meeting.
Okay, so we've touched on the scoring and the planning a little bit,
Right.
but let's dive a little deeper into those. So scoring, that's basically about looking at your weekly scorecard and like being honest with yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's about taking an honest look at your actions and seeing like, okay, did I actually do what I said I was going to do? And if not, why not? It's not about like beating yourself up or anything. It's just about being really objective and using that information to like learn and grow.
Right, so it's not just about checking things off a list.
No, definitely not.
It's about understanding like the patterns in your behavior
Hmm.
and making those like conscious choices about how you're going to spend your time and energy.
Exactly. And then once you've scored your week, it's time to plan for the next week. So you're going back to your 12-week plan. You're looking at your goals, and you're basically translating those bigger goals into like actual tasks that you can do that week. So
Yeah.
it's like zooming in on your roadmap.
Right. Okay. So you're basically creating like a detailed itinerary for the week.
Exactly. And you're prioritizing, making sure that you're focusing on the things that are really going to move the needle,
Mhm.
the things that are going to get you closer to those bigger goals.
Okay. And then the wham. That sounds kind of intimidating.
Oh, no, not at all.
What is that exactly?
It's basically just a meeting, either in person or virtually, with like a small group of people, maybe like-minded people who are also working on their goals.
Okay.
And it's just a chance to like share your wins,
Okay.
get support if you're struggling with something, and just like learn from each other's experiences. It can be really powerful.
I like that. It's like a little like a support group for like high achievers.
Totally. And, it doesn't have to be anything formal or like super structured.
Yeah.
It's just a chance to connect and like hold each other accountable.
That makes sense. Okay, so we've got the scoring, the planning, the wham. Anything else in terms of like the weekly routine?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
Oh, but we should talk about process control.
Okay, yeah. We've mentioned that term a couple of times.
Mhm.
What does that actually look like in practice?
So process control is all about like bridging that gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. It's about putting systems in place that like help you stay on track and overcome those like obstacles that tend to trip us up.
Right, because we all have those little things that we do or don't do that, like sabotage our efforts, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. So the book has a whole bunch of techniques for establishing good process control. But one that I find really helpful is like visualizing your ideal week.
Okay, I like that because I'm a very visual person.
Yeah, so basically what you do is you imagine like a blank calendar for the week ahead,
Hmm.
and you actually block out time for everything. Your deep work sessions, your admin tasks, your workouts, your downtime, everything. It's basically like creating this blueprint for a week that supports both like your productivity and your well-being.
Okay, I see. So it's like taking control of your time rather than letting your time control you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another really helpful technique is to create some kind of visual tracker for your goals and your key metrics. Like it could be a whiteboard, a spreadsheet, whatever works for you. But the idea is that you're like visually tracking your progress, which can be really motivating.
I like that because it's kind of like It's kind of like turning the whole process into a game, you know? It's like
Yes.
you're like, coloring in a chart as you reach these milestones, and it just makes it more fun and engaging.
Totally. It's like gamifying your goals, which is a great way to stay motivated.
Exactly.
Okay.
Any other process control strategies that you want to share?
Um, well, one more that I think is super important is setting boundaries.
Okay. Yeah, boundaries are
Yeah,
huge.
especially in today's like always on world.
Right, because it's so easy to just like let work bleed into every area of your life.
Exactly. So think about things like setting specific work hours,
Mhm.
being strategic about when you check email, and just like communicating your availability to people.
Yeah.
It's about protecting your time and energy.
It's about like being proactive rather than reactive, right?
Exactly. And it's about like respecting your own time and making sure that you have space for the things that are important to you.
Okay, I'm definitely working on that
Hmm.
because I have a tendency to like overcommit and try to please everyone.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do.
So it's about like putting yourself first sometime.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so process control, it's really about like streamlining your workflow, removing those obstacles,
Hmm.
and just like making it easier to stick to your plan.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, one thing I'm curious about is, how do we deal with all those like urgent tasks that always seem to pop up and derail our best intentions?
Right, so that's where time blocking comes in.
Time blocking, yeah, I've heard of that, but I'm not sure. I haven't really like fully committed to it.
Yeah. So the idea behind time blocking is that you're moving away from like reacting to whatever comes up, and instead you're proactively scheduling your week based on your priorities.
Okay, so it's about being like intentional with your time.
Exactly. And the key is to schedule your strategic blocks first.
Okay, so strategic blocks being
So those are the time slots that are dedicated to the activities that are really going to move you closer to your goals, like your deep work, your creative projects, anything that requires like focused attention and energy.
right, because those are often the things that get pushed aside when like other stuff comes up.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to schedule them first.
Okay, that's a really good tip.
And then once you have those strategic blocks locked in, you can fill in the gaps with those buffer blocks for email, admin work, and those less demanding tasks.
I see. So you're basically prioritizing your time based on what's most important.
Exactly. And that way, even if things get crazy and your schedule gets thrown off, you know that you at least got those most important things done.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense. So strategic blocks first, then buffer blocks. What about time for like recharging and just, taking care of myself?
Right, so that's where breakout blocks come in.
Breakout blocks, okay.
Yeah, so those are specifically for things that help you renew and reconnect with yourself.
Okay.
So it could be like going for a walk in nature, spending time with loved ones, pursuing a hobby, anything that helps you relax and recharge.
Okay, so it's not just about like being super productive all the time.
No,
So
definitely not. It's about creating a sustainable approach to achievement,
yeah.
one that honors both like your goals and your well-being.
This is so eye-opening. It's like the 12-week year isn't just about getting things done. It's about creating a life that you actually enjoy.
Exactly. It's about designing a life that aligns with your values and priorities. A life that like brings you joy and fulfillment.
I'm so on board with that. Okay,
Yeah.
can we just do a quick recap of the key takeaways from this part of our deep dive, just to kind of like solidify everything?
Sure. So we started by talking about the importance of the weekly routine, scoring your week, planning your week, and having that weekly accountability meeting, the WAM. Then we dove into process control, talking about things like visualizing your ideal week, tracking your progress, setting boundaries, and time blocking.
Now, we talked about those different types of blocks, strategic blocks, buffer blocks, and breakout blocks.
Exactly. It's all about being intentional with your time and energy.
This has been a really insightful journey so far. I feel like I'm starting to get a real handle on how to actually implement this system.
Me too. There's a lot to take in, but it's all very practical and actionable.
Absolutely. Okay, so what's next? What else do we need to know about the 12-week year?
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the vision, the planning, the weekly routines, the whole process control thing. But I'm also curious about the potential pitfalls. Like, what are some of the things that trip people up when they try to implement the 12-week year? Because, we all start things with great intentions, but then life happens. And sometimes things just, fizzle out. Yeah, definitely. It's easy to get excited at first and then kind of lose steam when things get challenging. One common mistake is not connecting those 12-week goals to your larger vision.
Oh, right.
It's like setting off on a journey without knowing where you're going.
Right.
You might be moving, but you're not necessarily moving in the right direction.
That's such a good point. It's like you can get so caught up in the day-to-day that you forget why you're doing it in the first place.
Exactly. So it's important to keep that inspiring vision front and center. To remind yourself, like, okay, this is why I'm putting in the effort.
Yeah, yeah. It's about making meaningful progress, not just checking things off a list.
Absolutely.
Okay, what about trying to do too much at once? Because I know I've definitely been guilty of that in the past.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that's another common trap. Trying to do too much, spreading yourself too thin,
Yeah.
and then ending up feeling overwhelmed and burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
So Moran really emphasizes the importance of focus. Like choosing one or two key areas where you want to make significant progress
Yeah.
and then really channeling your energy there. It's a sprint, not a marathon.
Right, quality over quantity.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about like falling back into old habits? Because, we can start with these great intentions, but then those old patterns just kind of creep back in.
Right. So habits can be tricky.
Oh,
But the good news is that you can actually create new habits that support your goals. It's about replacing those old, unproductive behaviors with new, empowering ones. And that takes time and effort, of
yep.
course, but it's definitely possible.
Right. And I guess it's also about being mindful of your environment. Like if you're surrounded by distractions, it's going to be that much harder to stick to your plan.
Oh, for sure. Environment is huge.
Yeah.
So it's about consciously designing your environment to support your goals,
Mm.
like maybe putting your phone in another room when you're working
Yeah.
or finding a quiet space where you can focus.
Right. Those little things can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Okay. What about the role of mindset in all of this? Because I know for me, like sometimes my own like limiting beliefs and negative self-talk, that can really hold me back.
Yeah, mindset is everything. And the 12-week year, it really encourages what's called a growth mindset,
Okay.
which is basically that belief that you can learn and grow and you can achieve anything you set your mind to. It's about reframing challenges as opportunities for learning and growth.
Right. So it's like shifting from like I can't to I can, from like I'm not good enough to I'm capable of amazing things.
Exactly. It's about believing in yourself and your ability to achieve your goals. And it's important to remember that you're not alone in this journey.
Right.
You can reach out to your support network. You can connect with other people who are also implementing the 12-week year. You can even work with a coach. Having that external support can be really helpful.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Accountability is huge for me.
Okay, what about perfectionism? Because I struggle with that a lot. Like, I can get so caught up in trying to do everything perfectly that I end up like procrastinating or feeling paralyzed by fear.
Yeah, perfectionism can be a real killer.
It's like this sneaky trap that keeps you from actually taking action.
Exactly. And the 12-week year is really about progress over perfection.
Okay.
It's about taking action, learning from your mistakes, and just continuously improving.
Right. It's like embracing the messiness of the process, like accepting that setbacks are going to happen and that's okay.
Totally. And last but not least, we can't forget about self-care.
Oh, right. Self-care. Yes.
It's easy to get so focused on achieving our goals that we neglect our own well-being.
Right. It's like that whole you can't pour from an empty cup thing.
Exactly. So the 12-week year reminds us to make time for the things that nourish us, whether it's spending time with loved ones, being in nature, or just like taking some time for yourself to relax and recharge. So it's about creating this like holistic approach to achievement.
Exactly. One that honors both your goals and your well-being.
Wow, this has been such an incredible deep dive into the 12-week year. We've covered so much.
We have.
And I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for achieving my goals.
I'm so glad to hear that. It's a powerful system, but it's also like a journey of self-discovery. So be patient with yourself, celebrate every win, no matter how small, and just keep moving forward.
That's great advice. I'm definitely feeling inspired to take action and start implementing some of these strategies. And on that note, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. Imagine yourself 12 weeks from now. What's one goal that you could achieve by applying these principles? And what would that mean for you? Until next time, keep diving deep and keep reaching for your dreams.